I would like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malakadee people of the Huon River, and the Lillaqwani people of the Far South. We recognise their continued connection to land, water and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I now go to item number 2, attendance. Councillors, we have Councillor Temby, Councillor Candace Smith, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Toby Thorpe. I have Councillor Paul Gibson. I have Councillor Debbie Armstrong, Councillor Andrew Burgess, Councillor Mark Jessup, Councillor David O'Neill, and I will now pass over to the General Manager for his offices.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so we have Matt Grimsey, our Director of Governance, Strategy and Sustainable Development, Tracy Hankin, who's our Acting Director of People and Organisational Services, and we have Mick Lowenstein, who's looking after our media tonight, Sandy Rustell, our Executive Officer, and Sue Lee, our Executives.
Thank you. We have our electors and we have our guests, so thank you. We don't have any apologies. Leave of absence or absence. Okay, confirmation of minutes of previous annual general meeting held on the 15th of December 2021. The councillors to look at the recommendation that the minutes of the annual general meeting held on the 15th of December 2021 be confirmed. Do I have someone to move that for me, please? Councillor Armstrong, and a seconder. Councillor Gibson. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors, and the motion is passed. Okay, so it's down to the presentation of the annual report for 21-22. Yep, you've all got copies of that. Okay, so the annual report is about communities with a strong sense of what they are, who they were, and who they might be in a rich social society. The long-term vision: to work in partnership with the community to improve quality of life for the people of the Huon Valley by investing in a dynamic, sustainable and reputable future. And our vision is working together for a prosperous, vibrant and caring Huon Valley community. We've, in the Huon Valley, with the census of 2021, we have a population of 18,269 and we have a total of 5,497 kilometres in the total of our Huon Valley. Council facilities, we have 4 transfer stations, 3 early learning and care centres, 2 swimming pools, 2 sports centres, 2 medical centres and 1 outside school hours child care service. I'd like to also start by thanking all the staff for their dedication and values they have shown in 21-22. Strong community values are found in just about any person who is a resident of this great valley. With council elections, we saw 25 candidates register, and at the end of October we have a new council, which you can see here tonight. So I'd like to thank the past councillors who, as councillors, have been through some difficult times, and I appreciate that there were some tough decisions made. I believe all councillors, old and new, display strength of character and they stand by their values during such times. At the heart of our communities are volunteers who work tirelessly. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do without them. Our community halls, festivals, events, reuse shop, clubs only exist due to their dedication. The strength and health of our communities are very dependent on volunteering. We developed a volunteering strategy to safeguard the future of volunteering in the Valley, and this was done in collaboration with the community. We know that there are some challenging times ahead with maintaining the number of volunteers in our communities, and the local volunteering network group have been meeting regularly to progress the actions identified in the strategy. The actions are aimed at addressing the issue of volunteering shortages and building volunteer participation in the Huon Valley. Our Reconciliation Action Plan, our RAP, was endorsed by Reconciliation Australia Council at the end of 2021. A really important step for making a meaningful impact in Australia's reconciliation journey. The development of this plan involved meeting with and listening to the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. It is their ideas and feedback that have directly shaped the actions set out in the plan. A lot of the journey is about listening, sharing stories and truth-telling. Through our beautiful Huon Beings film series, we have been working with the local Aboriginal community to share stories of the local Aboriginal culture and history. In this film, Indigenous elder Uncle Rodney Dillon spoke about not leaving too big a footprint and looking after the land and rivers. These are wise words indeed. I enjoyed hosting a cuppa for cancer, morning tea in early June. Around 10 Tasmanians a day are diagnosed with cancer, and the money raised helped Cancer Council with providing transport for treatment, running support groups, counselling and financial services. I invited students from Sacred Heart School to talk about the contribution they are making to saving waste and thereby making a positive contribution to the environment both locally and globally. I also had St James students come and help with the serving. Importantly, the event itself was waste-free. We didn't use any plastic and the leftovers were given to someone's chickens. One of my favourite events throughout the year is citizenship ceremonies. They are a wonderful reminder of how cultural, rich and diverse the Huon Valley is. It's a privilege to have people from all over the world and from all walks of life come and call the Huon Valley home. It takes my breath away seeing the delight and smiles on people's faces as they become Australian citizens. One particular moment stands out from the last ceremony I attended. A little boy was clapping the whole time for his father, which I found delightful. The fact that we have people who want to live here and be part of our community is special. People are drawn to the Valley for a whole bunch of reasons, and I'd have to say that it is not just our welcoming communities that attract people, but our ability to pull people together during tough times. One of our biggest challenges this year has been attracting permanent doctors to our 2 medical centres. This has had a significant financial impact. The Huon Valley, like many other regions and rural communities, is challenged with the recruitment of permanent GPs who have the level of skills and experience to support communities like Geefton and Dover, who are willing to relocate to a rural location with their families. As a result of vacancies, the centres have had to rely on locum doctors on a regular basis over the past 2 years. Locum doctors come at a higher cost that includes accommodation and travel costs covered by council. However, without their support, we recognise we cannot continue to provide this important healthcare service to the community. So we are very grateful for their availability. We are working with both state and federal governments on the effective delivery of current and future health services in the southern region of Tasmania, in particular the far south communities. Partnerships are important to delivering sustainable GP services in rural and regional areas. Unsealed roads. Our unsealed roads have been another one of our biggest challenges. This financial year we have allocated nearly $1 million to help rectify that. We've also allocated money into strategic planning and town planning. This investment means we'll be developing local planning provisions to protect heritage values in townships. Land use planning is about determining the future of the place where we live, work and play. By setting policies, developing strategies and establishing a framework for decision-making, planning provides a forum for our aspirations, what we want our society, our settlements, our infrastructure, our landscape to look like, and how we want them to function. It is pleasing to see the Chieftain Town Hall Controlling Authority proudly managing and operating the hall. It was agreed that this new management model was the best option because it met the community's desire for activities of the hall to be led by a skilled group of local volunteers who have been arranged and have an arrangement with council to ensure the hall continues to meet the desire and vision of the local community. When channeling productivity and positively, the actions and voices of communities have immense power. An example of this is when both Chieftain and Cygnet communities advocate for the installation of lifts in both town halls. It was a long time coming, but 2022 saw both lifts installed. These projects were included in the 10-year new asset plan in 2012 and delivered in 21-22. Sometimes it is not until you step away and look at other regions that you realise how much the Huon Valley is punching above its weight. We are lucky enough to have Huon Regional Care, doctors in every town, an abundance of local community groups, sporting clubs, early learning centres, the pools and people who are passionate about local food production, reducing waste and caring for the environment. We are fortunate, and I think that everyone who lives here realises that. Thank you. I will now pass over to the General Manager, who will present the financial statements from the annual report.
Thank you, Mayor. Our operating financial performance for the year 21-22 was a surplus of $5.1 million, exceeding our annual budget for the period by $4.8 million, primarily due to favourable budget variances in infrastructure assets of $2 million, taken over by council from developers of subdivisions. Recurrent grant revenue of $1.5 million, primarily due to an early payment of financial year 22-23 financial assistance grants and unbudgeted JobShub funding. Employee benefits of $0.9 million, primarily resulting from the cost of medical services and the reallocation of payroll tax expense to other expenses, which was an audit requirement. Other income revenue of $0.7 million, primarily resulting from higher than budget revenue from open space, public open space contributions and unbudgeted Chieftain Town Hall revenue. Capital grants of $0.7 million, resulting from primarily from an unbudgeted local roads and community infrastructure program grant for several projects, including the Cygnet Town Hall lift and Wilmot Road stormwater projects, and $200,000 in depreciation expense resulting from lower than budget infrastructure assets gifted to council. This is partially offset by an unfavourable budget variance in materials and services of $1.5 million, primarily due to higher than budget costs for the medical service locums, which is also partially offset by the employee cost line and unbudgeted withdrawal of reserve funds to support cross-year programs from 2020-21. Our underlying financial performance was marginally below target, a deficit of just under $300,000, but better than budgeted by budget by $400,000. However, with the exception of this indicator, all our management indicators under note 10.6 are all in line with the benchmark set by the Tasmanian Audit Office. We again have received an unqualified opinion on the independent audit undertaken by the Tasmanian Audit Office on our financial year 21-22 accounts. Finally, the review of our long-term financial plan during the year highlighted the financial pressures we are under to deliver the services and service levels currently provided to our customers and the community. The decision by Council to defer adoption of the draft plan ensures we have the opportunity to engage with the recently elected councillors on ensuring we have a financially sustainable future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I might add, we had a meeting with the Tas Audit Office today, and they were saying that every council is having the same. They might be different in what it is, but every council's having issues at the moment with different things. We're not on our own. Okay, discussion of community submissions received. There is a copy of those, I think, on everyone's seat, and they will be on the on the website. Okay, thank you. Okay, so yeah, we'd like to thank everyone for those submissions, and for the ones that made comment and submissions about the report, we will give our consideration for those. Thank you. Questions from the public on the annual report? If I noticed that a couple have brought up, if anyone's got questions, emotions, if they have them in writing. Oh, questions before motion, sorry. This is questions. So attendees are reminded that questions should relate to the Council's 21-22 annual report. When asking a question, speakers are requested to address their questions to the Mayor. Questions provided prior to the AGM. Neil? Do I have any questions from the gallery? Yes? Would you like to come to the microphone? Because otherwise you won't be on the video. So, thank you. And just state your name. Thank you.
Hi, Belinda Yaxley from the Huon Valley Zoning Association, President-elect. I've got two questions and also a motion, but I believe the motion should be parked for now and we will manage that later. It's just questions, okay. Thank you. So my first question is, and these questions are related to the annual report as requested, and I feel that they do cross over several of the strategic objectives, so whilst I won't reference any specific part to the annual report, I feel like they are across context of the report in its entirety. So, is the low unemployment context that council and community are now operating in affecting council's capacity to fill its employee needs? And does this threaten delivery capacity of council programs? And is there risk management planning in place for this?
Okay, thank you. Can you answer that one, please? Through to you, General Manager.
Thank you, Belinda. Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say that the low employment environment that we're in, and I've got to get this right, I keep talking outside of the microphone, not talking with you, but is certainly impacting on all businesses that I'm coming across in the sense of being able to attract experienced, qualified personnel. we, like everyone, are competing in a market for resources with other, 29 other councils. We're seeing even competition between councils to retain and attract staff. Is it a threat to delivery? Look, we have had instances where it has delayed some of our initiatives. We have taken that into account as we come across the year and those initiative start dates, and have looked at other ways for us to continue progressing some of those initiatives. But look, we still feel the program and the promise that we made for 22-23 to the community is something we can deliver, and continue to work on that over the remainder of this year.
Thank you. My second question, and I'll keep this short. Again, I speak to you as the President of the Huon Valley Zoning Association, and with respect to the strategic objectives of the annual report. We've been trying to speak with you as General Manager since May, as you'd be aware. More recently, we received communication from you as of last week, I believe it was the 8th. And you've told us that there still isn't a point to meeting with us at this stage, and our concern around that is that's not really exemplifying or showing that there is a genuine engagement or an intent to engage with community, and we want to talk technical around zoning. We have a group, we have a formalised group, and we have very professional people within that group, business analysts, ecologists, planners and so forth. And so what I'm asking today is that can we meet with you and can we discuss community views on zoning and technical aspects of zoning?
Yeah, I think as per the response I gave you last week, we are through a process, and to open it up to one group would mean opening it up to everyone for their input. We obviously had a fairly lengthy engagement through the exhibition and got lots of feedback, and have incorporated that all into the 35F report and presented that to council consideration. So the challenge we have is that we are partway through a process, and we would need stopping and considering all of the input, not just your particular interest group that we would be doing. So that's why we've come back to you and confirmed that we're not able to do that at this point, noting that some of the information that would ultimately make its way through to the TPC, and everyone would have an opportunity to attend that and provide their opinions, and we saw that as ultimately where this might lead to. But and when I responded to you last, we hadn't had any feedback from the TPC. We do now, and I think you'll see that in the council meeting papers that have gone out. So at this stage, it would be difficult for us to engage with you, because there's obviously a lot of other interest groups that would need to be heard as well.
Thank you, and apologies, Mayor, I was supposed to direct the questions to you, I realise that.
Thank you. Yes, we have, yes.
Yes, Caleb from Dover Crabtree. To you, Mayor, I've got two questions. The first question is, looking at the legal and governance expenditure figures of 1.258 million and the environmental and developmental services expenditure figures of 2.562 million, what portion of those figures are spent on the land management strategy, administering the town planning scheme, land development, for example, discretionary versus permitted developments? That's the first question.
To take that question on notice.
Can we get that in writing as well? Lovely, thank you. And your second one?
And the second question is, building on that first question, looking forward to when the council adopts an LPS What are council's perceived changes within the above-mentioned areas, expenditure and workload, in light of the proposed draft LPS that shows a significant shift for landowners in development use from a permitted use to that of discretionary use?
Okay, thank you, Carter. Back through you, General Manager.
Else is within there. Take that on notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No? Right. General business, motions provided on notice for the meeting. Okay. So, do I have anyone from would like to move a motion? Yes, Pat? Thank you.
Pat Singh on behalf of the Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association. As some of you may recognise this motion, it's very similar to one we put last year. So I'll read out the motion first to get a seconder, is that correct, Mayor? Yes. So the motion is, the Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association moves that Huon Valley Council should note and take action on the decision of the 2021 AGM to allow development applications to be downloaded from its website. To this end, Council should require that a report be prepared and made available for councillors to consider no later than the February 2023 meeting.
Is there a seconder for? Thank you.
As I said,
Yep.
some of you may recognise this motion if you were here at the meeting last year, the AGM. Most councils in Tasmania allow development applications to be downloaded from their website and saved for future reference. The Huon Valley Council does not. Some developments take years to complete, and without a copy of the original development application, it is impossible for the public to know if the completed works were undertaken as approved. We know of at least one relatively major subdivision where significant changes were made. The public open space that had been part of the approval was reduced from 1,200 square metres to 200 square metres. This was done behind closed doors without any information being provided to the public or even to councillors. The developer got 3 extra lots to sell, council got cash in lieu, and had less public open space to maintain. So it was only the community who lost out. I should point out that actually in that case, some changes were made subsequent to that, and the public open space reverted to 800 metres. But that was difficult. There may have been other similar cases, but without being able to refer to the original development application, it is unlikely that anyone would be aware of these. So this refusal to allow the public to download and retain the development applications puts Huon Valley residents at a disadvantage compared with residents of other council areas in Tasmania, or indeed in most of Australia, where downloads are permitted. Fair use of copyright material is a well-established principle, and we know of no cases where this has been challenged. So as I said, we moved the same motion at the last AGM, and it was passed unanimously. When we asked in May when a report would be tabled for consideration by councillors, we were told that the review was expected to conclude in July. It has still not been presented. Shall I repeat the motion, Mayor?
Yes.
Yes. So our motion is The Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association moves that Huon Valley Council should note and take action on the decision of the 2021 AGM to allow development applications to be downloaded from its website. To this end, Council should require that a report be prepared and made available for councillors to consider no later than the February 2023 meeting.
Is there any comments? Will you take the vote now? Yep. We like to count the votes, so all those in favour of Mr. Sims' motion, please raise your hand. And any against? No? Thank you.
I have another motion here, which is a rather similar vein at least. So the motion is the Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association moves that Huon Valley Council should publish all their planning reports on Council's website when the decision is made, in order that interested parties can consider and take advice on the report before the 14-day deadline for lodging an appeal.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for Mr. Sims' motion? Yes, your name is?
John Barnum.
We didn't get that. Sorry, sir.
DIMDNT.
Thank you. Is there any comment or for?
Perhaps I could read out to explain it. So, development applications which are subject to discretionary criteria are presented to Council for consideration only when there are 3 or more representations made. If they receive less than 3 representations, they are assessed by Council staff under delegated authority and do not go to councillors. The planning reports are prepared, but they are not made public. So representors and/or applicants are thereby placed at a significant disadvantage when determining whether to lodge an appeal. They have no information on which to base their appeal because they haven't seen the report. To overcome this, Council should publish all their planning reports on Council's website. This would improve decision-making transparency and create a fairer system for all. So that's basically it, and the motion again is that Huon Valley Council should publish all their planning reports on Council's website when the decision is made, in order that interested parties can consider and take advice before the 14-day deadline for lodging an appeal.
Thank you. Is there any comments on that? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour of Mr. Sims' second motion, please raise your hand. 10. And against? That's nil.
Okay, and one more. This is about the cash reserve. We move, it's the Residents Association, moves that a report be prepared explaining in detail exactly why it is recommended that Council should increase its cash reserves to $30 million over the period of the long-term financial plan. That this report should provide a list showing the cash reserves of all other comparable Tasmanian councils, and it should be presented to a public meeting of Council at least 1 month before consideration of the long-term financial plan. So that's the motion we're putting.
Okay, do I have a seconder to Mr. Singh's motion? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so a cash reserve is generally defined as a sum of money that an individual or organisation saves and keeps available in case of emergency or other sudden short-term requirement. Huon Valley Council has increased its cash reserve from 9.6 million in 2016 to 18.3 million in 2022. Now, we acknowledge the importance of retaining a healthy cash reserve and also for retaining funds for asset maintenance and replacement. But the current cash reserve represents more than Council's annual income from rates and is considerably more than the cash reserve held by other comparable councils. Our new councillors will soon be recommended to approve the long-term financial plan that sees this cash reserve increasing to over $30 million during its term. So, is there a plan, or is Council just being cautious? If there is no plan, then current ratepayers are foregoing benefits so that this money can sit in the bank. So what does Council intend to spend this money on and when? So the motion again is that a report be prepared explaining in detail exactly why it is recommended the Council should increase its cash reserves to $30 million over the period of the long-term financial plan, and that this report should provide a list showing the cash reserves of other comparable Tasmanian councils, and it should be presented to a public meeting of Council at least 1 month before consideration of the long-term financial plan.
Thank you. Do I have any comments on that motion? Not normally, you can.
This is a general question. Is there literature surrounding the topic already existing that's talked about specifically why we need to increase funds already existing?
I don't believe that in our long-term plans addressing this, and this has been a question that I've asked a couple of times for us to be able to consider. So again, I think the best bit respect for the process of long-term financial planning.
Thank you. Do I have any others? Okay. I'd like to show all those in favour of Mr. Singh's third motion, please raise your hand. Those, okay. Are those not in favour? Please raise your hand. Yep. All right.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. White, Jerry? Are you going to be able to give me a copy of your motion?
Yes, and hopefully it gets accepted. The motion is about climate change in the community, that Circular Economy Huon moves that a report be prepared for the Huon Valley Council by March 2023 on either establishing a special committee on climate change in accordance with Section 24 of the Local Government Act 1993 or forming a climate change working group.
Okay, do I have a second of Mr. White's motion? Yes, thank you. Okay. Have you got anything else you want to say about that?
Yes, please. First, I wanted to say I was impressed with your opening statements, Mayor, where you were talking about the long-term vision for the Valley in terms of working in partnership with the community, and I think that this motion is about that. The Huon Valley Council has taken some good initiatives, I think, in terms of climate change over the past few years. It's included participating in the STCA, what is called the STCA Ricky initiative. signing onto the city's power partnership by the Climate Council in 2017, purchasing an EV, a Hyundai Ioniq, in February 2020, endorsing the climate change mitigation strategy in February 2021, and we live with hope for the climate change adaptation plan, which is still in the throes of being produced. Despite these pledges and commitments, it is difficult for the community to understand what progress the Council is really making in reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the Valley. It is noted on page 17 of the Huon Valley Council Climate Change Strategy, the mitigation strategy, that Council understands the importance of working with the community, and we understand the sort of work that community members are doing in their own right to bring down climate emissions. Appreciating the difficulty of keeping the community abreast of climate change activities, and given the strong community concerns on these issues, it is recommended that strong consideration be given to forming either a special committee or a working group to alleviate this challenge and improve outcomes for the Valley.
Okay, so would you just like to say your motion again, and then I'll go to the second.
Certainly. Circular Economy Huon moves that a report be prepared for Huon Valley Council by March 2023 on either establishing a special committee on climate change in accordance with Section 24 of the Local Government Act 1993, or forming a climate change working group.
Do I have a seconder for... Oh, done that? Okay, that's right. Yeah, I'm opening it up for any comment on that. No? Okay, so do I have all those in favour of Mr. White's? 7. Those against? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And you'll have a copy to Sue? Yep, thank you. Okay, yes, thank you.
Stephen Williams on behalf of Circular Economy Huon. The motion we're putting forward is that the Huon Valley Council commission relevant advice on the pros and cons of declaring a climate emergency or a general environmental emergency, as has South Australia and more than 100 councils around Australia, including Hobart, Launceston and Kingborough, so that this council reach a decision by no later than March 2023, and the council might seek submissions from the community to assist it in making that decision.
Okay, do I have a second for Ms. Storm? Thank you.
I don't have a great deal to say about I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't want to bore everyone by saying how dangerous climate change is. It's killed millions of people, it'll kill millions more. It's going to get worse because all around the world actions have been totally inadequate and remain totally inadequate. We do have to face up, unfortunately, to this most serious existential threat, and unfortunately it's not the only existential threat we face, because it's in combination with other environmental threats, the obvious one being the biodiversity crisis. These are all linked, and I think every council has to come to terms with this sooner or later, And with all problems, it's all much better to act sooner rather than later. So I'm happy to take questions on it or simply to repeat the motion.
Is there any questions or any comments from, yes? Now, right, yeah, first,
Thank you, Mayor.
would you like to come up to the, is that right?
Oh.
Yeah, because otherwise you won't be recorded. Yeah, so,
I'm just not being very familiar with your organisation and having a limited understanding. You're hearing the term more and more often as the recent years go by. I'm really interested in your definition of what circular economy is and means to your organisation.
That's rather tangential to motion, and I'm not really in a position to speak for the organisation precisely what its full range of principles are, but
that's okay. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, yes.
Well, I say this. If there was extremely concerned, I can put those with that.
No, I know, it's the, for the video, for the live. Yeah, thank you.
If they're all extremely concerned about the environment, I think quite often one thing is overlooked, and that's the spread of the glyphosate chemical. Glyphosate is the most used chemical in the world. That is comes in a water paste, that comes in the ground. You can't drive anymore after you see how blonde roadsides. It's absolutely disgrace. I know what council's answer will be. We can't afford it, but there are lots of alternatives. There are nowadays environmentally friendly weed killers. There's agricultural vinegar. In earlier days, when we just arrived here, there was hot water spraying going on. And I think for council always to claim how environmentally aware they are. Sorry, I don't take that one. So that's all I want to say about it.
Thank you. So, do we have any other? Okay, well, we'll take a vote on that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Yeah, and Mary Ann. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Seven. Okay. Against? No? Okay. Can we have that in writing? Yeah. Thank you. Just makes it easier. If we give that to Sue, that'll be fine. We can give that to Sue. Okay. Who else? Caleb? Oh, the one that Dr. Smith has.
Of course.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Liz Smith, signature on behalf of Circular Economy Huon. The motion that we would like to put forward is in two parts. Firstly, that a report be prepared for the February 2023 Council meeting at the latest, so that the Council can consider the risks to the community of having inadequate local public transport systems in place. And the second part is that the Council then allocates funding in the 22-23 budget for a project officer to work with the community on developing a comprehensive plan for provision of local transport systems throughout the valley to link with existing and hopefully future extended bus services on the Huon Highway and the Channel Highway.
Okay, do I have someone to second Dr. Smith's motion? Thank you. Okay, would you like to
Thank you, yes. We made a short submission, which you can see in the printed material, and the response from Council was that the 2020 Community Plan has expired and transport is not specifically included in the current strategic plan and is not discussed in the 21-22 annual report as any specific action of the Council. Participation is encouraged in the Huon Valley Visioning Project and the development of updated land use development strategy to highlight the importance of transport as a strategic consideration for the Council. So I'm very pleased to see that transport is now an important strategic consideration. So I started by talking about the Community Plan 2020, which had a commitment to improve transport and communication. This was developed in 2008. This was one of 8 future directions that grouped the strategic objectives for the Huon Valley, and the measures under that are to improve public transport and investigate road use alternatives, being frequency of service, service statistics, cycle usage, and carpooling. The 2015 to 2025 strategic plan omitted transport, other than road infrastructure, as a project that the Council was committed to, and the issue was not addressed in the annual report, as I said. The Council's Climate Change Mitigation Strategy, Part A, strongly supports changes to the transport system to minimise carbon emissions through advocating for improved bus services, which have been consistently raised as an issue important to residents. So that's what Council should be advocating for under the Climate Change Mitigation Strategy. The strategy also recognises that improved bus services provide opportunities for residents to utilise personal vehicles less and subsequently reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Times have changed since these things were put forward, and technology is now available for electronic organisation of carpooling and ride-sharing using appropriate apps. And this could be considered as part of a better communication aim in the 2020 Community Plan, which was about communication as well as transport. Social isolation has long been recognised as a significant risk to health and well-being, especially within our dispersed rural community. Community Transport Services Tasmania, CTST, provides transport for people in need of medical services and necessary shopping and uses volunteer drivers. And I don't know whether this vital service is supported by the Council in any way. Recent world events have demonstrated the vulnerability of supply chains, so the reliance of Australia on the import of liquid fossil fuels for transport represents a real risk. And Tasmania is at the end of the supply chain, so we need to have a framework in place to address this risk. Also, the rising price of fuel is already impacting the health and well-being of our community. In large cities, there are public transport systems that do enable people to move around without their own car, and these could be adapted in an emergency to be used more. In rural areas such as the Huon Valley, however, the absence of systems that enable people to travel if liquid fossil fuel supply becomes unavailable would make residents very vulnerable. So the need to reduce car dependence by Huon Valley residents has become a very serious issue for the future. So local government, as the level of government closest to the people and with the best understanding of the needs of the local community, has a responsibility to address the real risks posed by the very high dependence on use of the private car and the lack of alternative transport systems. So I'll read the motion again. Secretary Connie Huon moves that a report be prepared for the February 2023 Council meeting at the latest, so that the Council can consider the risks to the community of having inadequate local public transport systems in place. And that the Council allocates funding in the 22 to 23 budget for a project officer to work with the community on developing a comprehensive plan for provision of local transport systems throughout the valley to link with the existing and future extended bus services on the Huon Highway and the Channel Highway.
Thank you for that. Okay, do I have any comments on this? No, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those
Thank you.
Can I have a copy to Sue, please? Thank you. Okay, did you have a hand up before for a motion? Sorry, did you have a hand up before for a motion? No? Yeah, one up, what can we do? Yep. No, yep. No. Okay, all right. Okay, Belinda, would you like to? Oh, after you. You go. Yep, you go, Belinda. Thank you.
This addresses strategic objective 5, environment and development services specifically. I'd like to table a motion on behalf of the Huon Valley Zoning Association for the Council's consideration at next meeting, so that will be the January meeting 2023. The motion calls on the Council to work within the terms set out by the TPC's letter dated the 7th of December 2022. Specifically, the motion calls to amend the draft LPS through a 35 document in consideration of the areas outlined in this motion, 11 to 14, which I will read shortly. Much of the work done by Council has already provided a framework for Council to revert to and adopt. Further details are provided in the motion, which again I will read out 11 to 14. But in essence, it's aimed at hopefully producing an LPS outcome that is more in alignment with the wider community and individual landowners' expectation, many of whom we share views with and we represent here tonight. So in light of that, I will read out 11 to 14. Where representations have been made to Council that prosecute a like-for-like transition, that is to say a most likened zone translation, for example, rural resource to rural, significant agriculture to agriculture, then those representations should be granted acceptance. 12. Council should in principle revert back to the translation table that was previously resolved on the 22nd of May 2019. With the work that had already been done with mapping tables and data points, this should only take the Council 2 weeks for GIS work maximum. Point 13. Council should abstain from applying landscape conservation zone in principle and rather seek to address landscape conservation zone application and other controls where appropriate after an initial adoption of the TPS, where considerable community and landholder consultation has been had and where a comprehensive analysis of landscape values have been evidenced, objectively evidenced. Under section 66 of the blooper, Council should begin to consider how they are to fund compensation claims from landholders where their land use has been shifted across from previous expected use to that of a public purpose through downzoning with zones like landscape conservation zone.
Okay. Do I have a seconder?
Nigel Goodwin.
Thank you. Do you want to talk to that, or you've said enough, you think? Yep. Okay. Do you want to? So the motion was those three.
11, points 11 to 14. Yeah.
14.
And to seek a response and consideration at the January meeting.
Do I have any comment on that motion? No? Yes?
Just a question.
Excuse me, sir. Could you come up because it's not been. We haven't got a record of for the people that couldn't make it tonight. If you don't come up the front, if that's okay, please. Thank you. You're not caught on the.
So my understanding of what you just said is basically you like the draft planning document, most of it except for the environmental conservation.
Landscape conservation zone.
Is that the gist of it?
It's not so much that I think the term like probably is in error. I think the LPS is agreeable to and in its essence is like for like, essentially, except with the exception of this zone.
Yeah. And the motion says that the council could very quickly adopt everything in the draft plan except for the exceptions. Is that right?
Essentially, the consideration is seek landholder consent under LCZ and where it's appropriate, where it's the ultimate assessment criteria for the planning scheme is like-for-like transition. And rural resource to LCZ is not like-for-like.
Okay. All right. So now, that's the last bit. Yes. Thank you.
Just very simple comment. I don't effectively voting either for or against this because I don't know what the translation paper was previously resolved on the 22nd of May 2019 was. Without knowing that, it's very difficult to know whether I vote for it or against it.
Karen, do you want to answer that? Essentially, it's like for like transition.
So, yes, thanks, Caleb. Would you like to come?
Okay, so on the 22nd of May 2019, there was a translation table that was resolved at Council, and it followed a lot of what other councils have done and had zones like rural resource moving to rural, significant ag to ag, and so on and so forth. The only zone that didn't really have a like-for-like translation was the environmental living zone, and that had potentially two zones they could go to, which was rural living zone or the landscape conservation zone. So what we're saying is that for the zones we did have a more like-for-like translation, like rural resource to rural, that's where those should be going. And then adopt landscape conservation and other controls after the fact that we've moved initially across to a TPS when additional analysis of landscape, scenic values and so on and so forth are done. That table is also available on the council's website within that month's meeting.
So that's May 2019, not actually sitting there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think the next meeting, I suspect, was supposed to be tomorrow, if it's at all possible to consider that motion, because the letter from the TPC would want the council to have a 35F document in by the 27th of January. So
That's correct.
That's
If you have a look in it's in the agenda? Yeah, it's in the agenda.
So it would be most preferable to have that considered at the next meeting, which would be...
We will have a meeting before the letters due.
exactly.
Our January meeting, yes.
Assessing it, that sort of.
Thank you. Okay. Well, yes, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I don't have much voice to ask a long question. And this may be argued a bit of a Dorothy Dix question, but I know that the Council is investing significantly in defining landscape conservation, or just defining landscape values through the current work that it's doing. And it might help inform the meeting if, Mayor, you could, or through one of your officers, give a bit of an outline on what sort of timeline we think that community engagement process is going to take. Thank you.
The General Manager to the Director. Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's it's certainly identified within the landscape conservation zone is the need to define landscape values. So there's been a council position on that. Certainly there's a need for council to, depending on, I suppose, in the outcome of the review of the 35F report, certainly there's a need for council to be actually identifying what those landscape values are and what are important to sustain that landscape conservation zone. That work will have to be done as part of strategic work. It's not done directly under the land use development strategy process. It's specific work on landscape values. Well, no, the work's not underway at the moment. It's just been identified as part of discussions on the 35F report.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do I have any other comment? No? Okay, well I can take a vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Yep. All those not in, or against, or not in favour? 3. Yep. Those against? Yep. All right. Thank you. Do I have, yes. You got a motion? Yes? Yes, did you want to come up? Yep. No? Okay. Okay, all right. Yes, Dr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. Liz Smith, Signet. I've been asked to move a motion on behalf of Geoffrey Swan of Lornavale. And the motion is that it's moved that at its ordinary meetings, Council revert to the former process where all public questions which are provided via email or online before the prescribed deadline are read aloud and answered into the recording of the meeting, and that public question time be increased from the statutory minimum of 15 minutes to not more than 30 minutes, and that the time taken to respond to the questions is not included as time used. Public question time to also allow questions relating to council matters, including items on the meeting's agenda.
Okay, do I have a seconder for Mr. Swan's motion being spoken by Dr. Smith? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, he's put in a couple of supporting comments. He says, public question time is the only process whereby members of the public are able to ask questions of council in a public forum, except for the AGM, of course. Historically, our Huon Valley Council has not experienced concern of public question time until the era of former Mayor Enders, Acting Mayor Doyle, and now Mayor Doyle. During the administration of our council, Commissioner Taylor regularly extended public question time and on one occasion allowed up to 50 minutes. But of course she didn't deal with having 9 councillors who wanted to talk. It's also noted that often the responses to the public questions are rambling and repetitive, taking up an extraordinary allocation of time. So do you want me to read the motion again? It's moved that at its ordinary meetings, Council revert to the former process where all public questions which are provided via email or online before the prescribed deadline are read aloud and answered into the recording of the meeting. Public question time be increased from the statutory minimum of 15 minutes to not more than 30 minutes, and that the time taken to respond to the question is not included as time used. Public question time also to allow questions relating to council matters, including items on the meeting's agenda.
Thank you. Do I have any comment? No, it's Jeffrey. Oh, it is Dr. Smith's motion. Okay, thank you. It's Dr. Smith.
I'm moving it on behalf of Jeffrey Swan from Lorna Vale because he couldn't come because of COVID. And that was approved, I gather.
Okay, do I have any comments? Okay, so I'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those, any against? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you'll have a copy for... Yep, thank you. Yeah, no, that's okay. Do we have any others? No. Okay. So then I just move on to, number 9, closure. The Mayor declares the meeting closed at... Thank you all for coming. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you.